So, week 3 of the movie marathon. And as I'm recording this on Wednesday morning, I am so behind. Again, I got a little behind last week. I was able to pull myself out of the weeds pretty easily. This week, not so much. Sunday's movie was The Wolfman, and as I may or may not have mentioned, I know I said that the 12th Saturday was really busy. It's because my cousin got married, and I had my family in town, and we were all going to that. And that Sunday, there was still, some craziness. My parents were still staying with me, and kind of weirded me out because it was actually my dad that suggested putting on the movie of the day, as opposed to I was just trying to find something on TV everybody would want to watch. And he was like, "Oh, what movie is for your marathon today?" So we watched most of The Wolfman. I ended up finishing it later that night, and then finally tracked down a copy of Blair Witch Project. So I was able to watch that. Wolfman, I've seen it so many times. I am a huge fan of the old Universal horror movies, so it's almost not worth even talking about for me. It's just something that I've grown up with. I've watched a million times. I still really like it. The only thing that really stood out to me this time as anything worth commenting on, I guess, was there is a scene fairly early on. Bela, the gypsy, played by Bela Lugosi, is the first Wolfman, the one that bites Larry Talbot and transforms him, and he dies in the process. And there's a scene of his gypsy. I don't know if it's really his mother or if she's just an older woman who refers to him as my son, just as a term of endearment or something. I never really figured out if they were actually blood related or not. But they have him. He's in his casket. They're preparing his burial ceremony, and it's the old gypsy woman speaking with a priest, and he's talking about, "Look, I understand, he's a gypsy and you're all gypsies, you're his friends and family, but that's no reason to deny him a Christian burial." And all I could think of was like, wow, that is so not PC. It was just kind of cracked me up. Obviously, a movie of its time, playing, I believe, even earlier. It was a 1941 movie, and time's not specifically stated in the film. I guess it could take place in the year it was made. It almost feels like it's of an older era as well. So it just kind of struck me as just a weird note in the movie. I just felt like pointing that out because, once again, I've said it, I've seen it so many times. Kind of noticing something new. That's one of the few rarities, I guess. Blair Witch Project, it was not as good as I remember. First of all, when I watched it, I had not seen a lot of modern horror movies. It's kind of fitting, actually, that I watched Wolfman and then Blair Witch this time, because that's kind of how my horror education went. I grew up on the Universal monster movies, and obviously, I'd turn on AMC every year and watch their horror movie marathon and watch as much as I could. But if you've ever seen that, it's a lot of Universal monsters. It's a lot of schlocky crap from the 70s and 60s, and then it's the later sequels of iconic 80s slashers, pretty much. So in that I saw some of the middle Daniel Harris, Michael Myers movies, some of the middle Jason, particularly Part 6, which I think is why Part 6 of Friday the 13th is one of my favorites. Never really saw any Nightmare on Elm Street, now that I think about it. That's kind of weird, but it was kind of the beginning of my modern horror education during that time. And then that's kind of what led, I think I mentioned earlier, Blair Witch Project. I actually got to rent for a school project because for a psychology class, we had to write a paper. And for whatever reason, I was possessed to write a paper on the psychology of horror films. And got a 100 on that project. It was high school, standard psychology easy class, but I was kind of proud that my psychology of horror movies got 100%. And but one of the things I watched for it as research for horror movies, because I hadn't seen a lot of modern movies, was Blair Witch, because it was so infamous at the time. And granted, it was still probably a few years old at that point, but it was creepy. It was genuinely creepy. I lived in a place where there were a lot of woods nearby, and you could kind of see how it would be creepy to be out there like that. This time, absolutely knowing that you never see the witch, it made it less desirable to watch, because they're going around the woods, you're looking at stuff, you're seeing things, And it is a lot of like, oh, what did I just see? What is that? What's over there? But knowing there's nothing actually there, and knowing that no matter how hard you look, you're never going to see anything because it's not there, it kind of downgrades it a little bit. However, I liked the end. The end, when they get into the house at the very climax of the movie, it still kind of had me on edge. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I'd seen it before. I've seen it parodied before. But, it actually still worked. It still held up. And found footage has become such a cliche and such an overused thing lately. I actually kind of enjoyed going back to, not quite the roots, because obviously there was The Last Broadcast, which is the first found footage horror movie, at least that I know chronologically. But, being the first one to really spark it on, to bring it forward, the thing that spawned everything. It spawned Halloween, Resurrection, Cloverfield, Paranormal Activity. I mean, none of that stuff. It probably would exist, maybe. Somebody else would have had the idea if these guys hadn't done it. But it's kind of cool to see the roots of it when it was still novel and still actually truly trying to be creepy and not just a gimmick to be like, hey, look, we have this style. And then Monday's movie was the 2002 TV movie of Carrie. And I'm still watching it. And there's two reasons why I'm still watching it. The first is still very busy. My dad went home, but my mom's still staying with us. So, I've been busy hanging out with her, spending time with her, and then also work and, all that stuff on top of it. So it's limited the amount of time I've had to watch stuff. But also, it's over 2 hours long, and it is tedious. It is so tedious. I complained last week heavily about The Rage Carrie 2 and how bad that was. And trust me, it's still a worse movie than this remake. But this remake is the definition of an unnecessary remake. If you're going to remake a movie, you need to show us something new. And I have defended in the past that remakes can exist and remakes can be good. And I realized, trying to think of the ones that I cite, there's a very specific quality to those movies. My top remakes would be Rob Zombie's Halloween. It would be John Carpenter's The Thing. It would be Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. Just to name a few, but those are all remakes that relish in showing us something we haven't seen before. It's taking a concept and saying, where do we go from here? And all three did it in very different ways. John Carpenter did literally what I would call a remake in every sense of the word. He took everything that was there and changed everything about it. Everything was different going into his. The basic idea was still the same, but the monster was very different. The location was switched. It went from one side of the earth to the other, the different poles of the earth. The cast, he eliminated all the females in the cast. He eliminated a lot of the Cold War metaphors in it. He eliminated the mystery of what the creature looked like. He just brought it out into bright light. He did everything to make that movie his own, and it was still, in some way, a loving tribute to what came before, but very much its own monster, literally and figuratively. Rob Zombie being the most obvious, he retells the story of Halloween, but very short. It's very, very short, and then he builds on this whole extra mythology about Michael Myers and his youth and his childhood and his time in the sanitarium, and once again, something we've never seen before up until that point. Just giving Michael Myers a deeper mythology, a canonical mythology, I guess you could say. Because Halloween, of course, people have come in and they've written things about Michael and they've said things, but this has actually given it a real justification. It makes it official within at least some film universe. And once again, something we hadn't seen before. Also, when he did do the remake of Halloween, of the original 1978 movie, he made it more brutal. He just made it more brutal. He put a lot more F-bombs in it, things like that. So it was still what we saw before, though. And, that I think was very successful. And then it was, of course, Dawn of the Dead just takes the back of the DVD box and says, okay, that's what Dawn of the Dead is about. Let me take that and just do what I would do with it. And I think that was a very successful movie. There's other remakes that work. But going back to my original point, Carrie 2002 does none of that. It's not a shot-for-shot remake by any means of the original 70s movie, but it is slavishly devoted to it. Not to Stephen King's word on the page, but to the movie script. It basically handed out the script to the original movie on day one of that shoot and was like, you're going to say these lines. And it doesn't work. And the characters they do change, I don't feel like it works. Tommy Ross is kind of bumbling and stupid, and I actually really liked in the original movie that he kind of came around to Carrie, that and maybe it wasn't a romantic relationship between the two of them, but he kind of saw past what other people were saying about her and how people treated her, and actually came to appreciate her as a human, in their last few moments there. That's gone, and it's just a slow version of the original movie. The pacing is just so drawn out and so overdone. And then the only new thing they show us is one thing that I really liked in Stephen King's book, the actually padding that he put into the book of these scenes of interviews with particularly Sue Snell, interviewing her after the fact, which was a large part of the novel, was interviews and papers and things brought together. This is just a police interview with her and one other chick. I think it was like the head of the high school class. And those are interesting in theory, but they're executed poorly. And that does really make me hopeful for the new Carrie movie, that it's going to be maybe some more of that, maybe a better execution of that. In a way, this was 2002, so it was still, post-Columbine and stuff, but in a way, just between, it was post-9/11, but now that we've kind of had more time to digest both of those events, I'm almost wondering if maybe the filmmakers can kind of put some more perspective that have come out of those real life tragedies and kind of use them and filter them down to create a more realistic world for the new Carrie film. Maybe I'm projecting a lot of hopes for what it could be. We'll see. I'm going Thursday night at 10 o'clock. There's an early showing, and I plan to be there. So we'll see how it goes. But 2002's remake, I'm not done with it, but I can already tell you I'm not a fan. Yeah, just not enjoying it one bit. Also, it doesn't help that Tuesday, this came out. My favorite movie of the year so far. I watched it. I wanted to watch it again. I want to watch all the bonus features. I love Pacific Rim. Hopefully I'll find those new action figures soon and review them for you early November once I'm done with all this horror stuff. But that just made it a little harder to want to watch more of that movie. I also missed out yesterday on Tuesday. I did not get a chance to get around to Phantasm. So today is going to be finish Stupid Carrie movie, which I only have like 10 minutes left, something like that. Then watch Phantasm. Then watch Let Me In, which is another movie that was on Netflix and all that stuff that is no longer there. So I'll have fun tracking that one down. I think Phantasm was in that boat too, but I might have a copy of that somewhere. I'll just have to find it. So finished up the 2002 Carrie remake, and then I watched Phantasm. Phantasm was interesting. It kind of stinks because I didn't really know much about the movie going in. I had pretty much no knowledge of what would happen, and I knew the tall man, I knew the orbs, I knew like the imagery of it, mostly from the action figure, but I'd never actually seen it, didn't really know what it was about. And the copy I got started off with an introduction by the actor who plays the tall man, and he basically spelled out the whole plot of the movie, and I guess it's for like an anniversary edition, so the hardcore fans would go and buy it, but it kind of stinks because I got the whole, I don't want to pay that forward and go and spoil it for anybody else who's missed out on it. It's a movie from the 70s. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that it's been spoiled. I mean, it's a long time. The movie's existed longer than I have, so I guess it's not that big of a deal that it was spoiled for me beforehand. It's not like it really affected anything, but it kind of stinks that I didn't get to experience it just kind of cold, because it's very rare I could watch a horror movie that old and have no expectations really of what I'm going to get. But I liked it. It was good. I don't know if I'll go back to it anytime super soon, but I'm sure I'll watch it again. If it was on TV, I'd definitely watch it. Let me know. I obviously haven't seen the sequels. Let me know if those are worth checking out or if I should just stop with the original. After that, I watched Let Me In, and that kept me further in my backlog for the week because it took me a while to watch. I really enjoyed the original the first time I saw it, Let the Right One In, and this one, it felt really slow, and I don't know if it was a pacing issue or an attention issue on my part, but it just took me a while to watch it and a while to get into it. I just watched it in little pieces over the course of probably another couple days or so, but it was okay. They took out one of the biggest twists of the original. I mean, they implied it maybe, but they didn't really show it. It definitely wasn't in there, and I thought that was a little weird. I mean, it was a weird twist to put in the original, but it was really weird that it wasn't in this one. On Thursday, I started watching Psycho 4, and that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was really just expecting just complete trash, just pathetic. But it really wasn't that bad. The acting was not good at all, but the overall story was okay. I mean, it really didn't have much in the way of kills, and I felt like the framing device kind of just drew it out longer than it needed to be. If they cut all the stuff with Anthony Perkins in it, even though I liked Anthony Perkins being there, but if they cut out all of his stuff and made it a shorter movie, probably not theatrical length movie, and maybe even told it chronologically as opposed to doing all these weird flashbacks, and you were never kind of sure what point in time you were going to jump into the story. I don't know. It might have been a little better, and some of the relationship between Norman and his mother were really awkward, and I don't think they really fit what it should have been for the actual series. But it wasn't bad. Once again, another movie I probably won't ever go back to, at least not anytime in the near future at all. But you could do worse than to watch Psycho 4. I've watched much more painful to watch movies like Bates Motel and The Rage, Carrie 2. Speaking of The Rage, Carrie 2, Thursday night I was supposed to go and see the remake, and that didn't happen. But late Friday night when I got off work, me and my girlfriend went and saw it, and it was kind of a mixed bag. It was pretty meh. If we lived in a world where you could not see the original movie, if video, DVD, internet, if that was all just non-existent, kind of like back in the early 80s or something, where you couldn't really go and watch an older movie, it would have worked, I think. I think Chloe Grace Moretz did an okay job as Carrie. The way they dressed her, the way they did her hair, she definitely didn't come off the way King portrayed her in the book, and she definitely didn't come up quite as alien-looking as Sissy Spacek back in the 70s, but I think they did a decent job of kind of, making her look like an outcast at school, but still being realistic. I could imagine being in school with a girl like that, and people kind of ostracizing her just because she looks so weird and so different from everybody else. So that made sense. There were definitely some pieces of it that I felt got kind of better explained, like the whole plug it up scene, I think actually flows a little more organically than it did in the 70s, which I actually liked a lot. That was a really nice directorial choice for the movie. Julianne Moore, I think, did a really good job as Margaret White. She's creepy as all hell. I think she should do more horror movies, because man, was she creepy in this one. It worked well. I liked her a lot in the role. The story, if you've seen the other movies, it's the same story. Two main points that really, really irked me about the whole thing. First one is they messed with the hair color between Chris and Sue. In both other versions of the movie, Chris has been blonde and Sue has been brunette. And they flipped it in this movie. And because of that, and having watched those other two movies so recently, I was constantly just not being able to remember which one was which, and having a little trouble up front recognizing which character was which was a little annoying. And my other biggest problem with the movie was the gym teacher. I forget which actress played her, but she delivered all her lines with this incredible insincerity that just came off as so crappy and fake and blah. There were a couple lines where she was like mocking somebody, and I was like, all right, this works. But then she never changed that tone. It sounded like that all the time. And then a lot of the lines are taken straight from the book or straight from the original movie, and really just, it sounds like a bland recitation of the lines from the script as opposed to actually, acting. So that really got on my nerves throughout the course of the movie. It really bugged me. Also, the trailers had made me think that they might actually go the way the book did and have the insert scenes of the White Commission and the excerpts from the books or interviews or something. I thought that could be kind of cool to tell the new movie the way the book was told. I was a little less looking forward to that after watching the 2002 remake, because they did try to put in the police interrogation scenes and it really just dragged the whole movie down. But they did not do that for the most part. There were no intercut scenes. It was all just told chronologically. And think it was a little bit of a bummer. There was a lot of opportunity to do something kind of unique there that, well, 2002 kind of did it, and maybe that's why they didn't want to do it. But yeah, and one last thing on that one, I'm going on a little long with this, but the scene at prom accompanying the pig's blood, I'm sure that's not a spoiler, everybody knew that was coming, but they do something else that, if you've watched The Rage, Carrie 2, and I don't recommend you do, there's definitely something that's very, very similar in that scene. I thought that was a little weird. Fortunately, even though I watched that Friday, that was my Friday movie. Saturday, I ended up being at work most of the day and wasn't able to get my movie in, but I did go see a late night screening of Machete Kills. They had buy one get one tickets and free popcorn with each ticket, so that was kind of cool. So 2 late night movies in a row. Machete Kills, not nearly as good as the first one, a little blander. It looked like they were trying to be a little more James Bond than they were trying to be just pure exploitation garbage like the first one. And the exploitation garbage is what made the first one great. So, not the strongest movie. Maybe if they do make the third Machete in Space, Machete Kills Again in Space, I should say, maybe they would come back to some of the more campy craziness that I was really hoping the movie would have throughout it. But this morning, Sunday morning, I watched the last movie for the week. That was The Abominable Dr. Phibes. That was my second Vincent Price movie. As you remember, I watched House of Wax earlier. I'd said originally that the makeups in the 2 movies, I always got confused between the 2. Now, after watching both, I could tell they are very, very different. The purpley weirdness that is the House of Wax makeup, and then the gray, barely seen thing in Dr. Phibes, they're definitely totally different. But I did get a lot of House of Wax out of Dr. Phibes. He does have like these clay sculptures of the people he kills that he melts and stuff. I was like, this is a little House of Wax here. Now I don't even know which one came first now that I think about it. But whichever one came first, there was definitely an influence on the other, I think. But the real thing that took me off guard with this movie is how much I think maybe contemporary filmmakers kind of took from it, because there's the whole theme of it. He's killing people based on the plagues of Egypt, and it was very reminiscent of Seven, which is a movie I really like, and Seven definitely did it better, but of course you're limited by the technology and what you can show in the 70s in the film, so yeah, they did an okay job with it. And then the end climactic thing, and I won't reveal it in case anybody wants to see it, but it was very much reminiscent of the Saw movies, which I thought was kind of cool. But that wraps up week 3 of my horror movie marathon. Not even 2 full weeks left, so maybe I could try to stay on track and watch all my movies on time this week. Particularly Snoo Snail.